it's a great way to like celebrate theater in Los Angeles. I feel like theater in LA sometimes just gets pushed under the rug. You know, this is a town that is obviously very focused on television and film, and it should be. That's where it came from. But there are obviously amazing actors and creators in LA, and a lot of times I feel like theater becomes like a showcase for your agent to come or your, that casting director that you really want to show up. And Fringe is a way to kind of get away from that. Like, sure, still a casting director may come and discover you and you're famous after that. But it's really more about, oh my God, I really love this piece. Let's do it. Or let's do this one because it's so fun and no one's going to put this piece up. So it becomes more of a work that's either you just love it and you're passionate about it, or you're just like, you know what, I'm going to get all my friends together and we're going to have a really good time and we're going to throw some stuff around on stage. I actually saw it performed last year. My mother performed the part of Olive. My husband and I went back east, and both my brother and my mother were both performing in different plays. And it had such an effect on me. And I'm not just seeing my mother act because she's been an actress my whole life, so I'm used to watching her act. But she was really amazing in the piece, and then the whole piece just really had a huge emotional effect on me. Like the whole time I was watching it, I was like, I have to do this piece again. I have to see it done again. I have to bring it to life again. I have to show other people this piece.
The play is important to be seen at Fringe. Because one, you don't usually get a lot of stories of a serious nature at Fringe. It tends to be a lot of funny shows or lots of interesting one-person shows. And why this story is important is that that it's never too late to get closure. It's never too late to find the thing that will put your heart at ease and put your heart at rest. And that even though you never think that there is a chance for redemption or forgiveness, it's always there. And you just need to find a way to grab it and make it happen. And I think that's a lesson that anyone can learn.
I feel like in this day and age, we read headlines every morning about terrorist attacks or school shootings, and they become numbers, and we become rather numb to them. And this play takes these tragic things that can happen to people and personalize them, and it personalized them into poetry almost. It's written as a Greek tragedy, but a very modern one that's easy to digest and easy to watch. But it's so filled with detail, which I really, really feel like is important, because I really feel, like I said, we become numb to these kind of tragedies that happen every day, and this piece takes a specific tragedy and not only personalizes it for the victims and the victim families, but where it takes place. This happens in a very small town in Scotland, and even though the characters are fictional, it's all based on real events, and so it's interesting to find out what happens to the town and the town's people, because we don't really often think of that. What happens to the woman who has her house demolished by this? Though maybe she didn't lose her life, or maybe she didn't lose her son's life, but her farm is gone. Or she was a witness, or he was a witness to this gruesome attack, and to dead bodies, and even picking up body parts, and what that's like, and how you come over something like that, and how you grieve through that as well.
Well, the story of the women of Lockerbie is a story of closure, and it's about an event that took place 7 years after the Lockerbie crash, the Lockerbie explosion of the Pan Am flight that was exploded over Lockerbie, Scotland. And it was 7 years later, and there were still lots of wreckage and refuse, and particularly clothing, that was being stored by the American government in a warehouse in Lockerbie. And the story is of the women of that small little town who wanted to get the clothing out, wash it, return it to the families so that they could have closure, as well as the American families could have closure. The story of this play actually starts 7 years after the tragedy, where they're at a memorial service, or it's just after the memorial service actually, and there are people who are wandering the hills. One character in particular she's been in mourning for 7 years, and she is looking for remains of her son. Now, obviously, after 7 years, the remains of her son will not be there, but she's inconsolable, and that's where she's starting. On the same night, the American government has ordered in fuel trucks to come in and to burn all the refuse that's still left over from the crash. And so the two stories are the woman finding her own closure, but the women of Lockerbie themselves trying not to let that happen, trying to do something else.
The Women of Lockerbie is a very important play because it's a true story, and it's a beautiful true story. And I wasn't aware of this crash. It happened when I was pretty young, and I didn't know that these women actually took all of these clothes and washed them and returned them to the victims' families. That's an incredible act of humanity, and you just don't see that these days. You don't see these acts of compassion, and I think it's just a really uplifting and heartfelt story of human compassion and overcoming grief and healing from uncomparable loss.
The importance of doing this play is it just shows that grief is okay. It's okay to go through the process of loss. Some people like to shut it down. I think this play helps people to see that it's okay to cry, it's okay to experience loss instead of shutting it down and trying to move forward.
I think if it were just a play about grief, it would be a huge downer. But I think it's about people resiliently trying to live after grief. And it's not just individuals, it's a community. Trying to figure out how to move forward in life, how to redefine themselves, especially the community in Lockerbie. We knew who we were before, and now who are we? And I think the washing of the clothing is a part of that, but I think, a lot of these people lost their families and they have to find new ones. So I think it's for anybody who needs to hear the story of life after blank, I think it's going to be beautiful and awakening experience.
It's important, I think, on a personal level. It's about grieving. I think I lost my father a couple years back, and we had another cast member who lost a family member recently, and I thought it was important to get into this role and to play this role, and I think it helps along with the grieving process in a weird way.
This play, which is The Women of Lockerbie, is a phenomenal play for right now because it's about people caring about what happens to victims. And when you think about what's going on in our society right now, the very fact that high school students are being shot at and are innocent victims, the very fact that, people have gone numb to what's going on in the Middle East, all of those things. And this brings it home because it's the point of view of the people of which the event happened to. And it's just so simple and beautiful in the way it shares its message. A play worth reading and seeing, The Women of Lockerbie.
It's really great to do a show like this because you can cast some of your favorite people. And that's what these people are. They're some of my favorite people. They're friends. Almost everyone except for, I think, Liz, I've worked with in some capacity, either on stage or on camera. Ed Ackerman and I did a short film together a few years ago, and then, of course, he used to do lots and lots of sketch comedy back in the day with my husband. So it's always just great to be able to go to rehearsal and soon go to performances where you get to not only do a piece that you're passionate with, but do it with people that you really love and have fun with, and you can trust. It's always great to do a play or a film or television with new people, but there's an element of trust that's already there, so you don't have to take those first 2 weeks or 2 days or 2 hours or 2 minutes or whatever to form a trust and a bond that's already there. So you can just kind of jump and play.
I personally like working with a smaller cast. I think you become closer. It's always a more intimate story. With a bunch of characters running around, there tends to be you tend to lose yourself or other characters get lost. But this play in particular really focuses on every character, not one person's story is left out.
Jim Blanchett, our director, he's very, very kind. He has a lot of empathy for women, and that was very, very important. This is obviously a very kind of focused primarily on women. He also has a very similar acting style to mine and a similar acting technique. He teaches a workshop that I've taken over the past few years, and it's similar to one that I studied with Stephen Book. So it's really great to direct with somebody, have somebody direct you that you understand their language or their lingo, or they can just say, okay, embody this. And you're like, oh, I get that. Or physicalize this. Oh, I get that. And he comes from more of a physicalizing acting technique as opposed to just a cerebral. And that works really well for me. And I think it works well for other actors as well.
Jim Blanchett is a brilliant director. We couldn't have him at the very beginning of the process because he was busy directing off-Broadway, blah. And so we got to have his beautiful wife step in, Lisa K. Wyatt. Both of them run a fantastic studio. So they're not only directors, like you never feel like a chess piece on stage. They're coaches. He's an actor's director, as is Lisa. And you know, there's a trap with this piece because the language is so beautiful and the story is so beautiful and the setting's stunning. I mean, you should see the set. But they're striving actively for the humanity and for the humor and for the life behind it. Like, there's something kind of savage in how they direct, and it's really exciting.
I love my cast, and I will tell you that I had worked with most of them before, which was always a benefit when you walk into a show. It's like, oh my God, I know everybody here. That's a joy to themselves because as people, I enjoy them just on a personal level, just enjoy working with them. But they also happen to be a remarkably talented bunch of people, any of whom could be leads in their own Fringe shows, and many of them have been leads in their own Fringe shows. And the fact that they were able to just sort of join this ensemble kind of shows you their commitment to their craft and their commitment to telling a beautiful story. So that's what I like most about my cast, is they're willing to just sort of be a unit as opposed to trying to be stars.
I think intimate theater has a transformative power because it's very clearly, you know, you're not dealing, you can respirate at the same rate as the people on stage, right? And I think everyone is there because they believe in the message. No one's there for the paycheck. So, and I can say that especially of this group, is that everybody is doing it because they believe in the story and they want it to be shared with the world.
So one of the best things about being in this play is that we've all worked together before, for the most part, and we're all friends. And that gives us a sense of safety and a sense of camaraderie. We're not afraid to mess up in front of each other. We're not afraid to try things in front of each other. Lisa, Liz, Eloise and I, we cry together, we hold hands, we hug, we huddle together, and there's no, the audience isn't going to think like, oh, well, that's fake. You know, they were probably told to do that. But we really genuinely love each other and care for each other. And in some ways, I feel like we have an advantage over any other cast of plays that don't know each other because we do have a history. And in our story, our characters have a history. So we don't have to fake that. We don't have to pretend that because we already love and care for each other. So that just comes naturally.
I play the character of Bill. The play's about the Lockerbie Pan Am flight that crashed, and I play one of the victims' fathers. who goes back with his wife to Lockerbie, Scotland, for the memorial service.
Madeline Livingston is she is a mother who has lost her son in this plane crash, and has come to Lockerbie on the 7th year anniversary of the crash. And she just wants to find something of her son's. Her husband thought he was doing something very healing for her by getting rid of all of his stuff. And so she's come there hoping to find something, because where he was positioned in the plane, he was just blown away. There was no remnants at all. I think so. She's having this really, really hard time healing, and she hasn't gone through the grieving process. Even though it's been 7 years, she's stuck at the very, very beginning of grief, where she's just crying and crying and crying. She can't get a hold of herself and move on in any capacity. So the arc of her is really just even to take that first step out of grief. She has a lot of beautiful monologues that are really almost like the stages of grief, that she's finally found that in Lockerbie, even though she doesn't. It's not like she's having a great time there. It's really that she's discovering how to kind of grieve, and that's where her arc takes her.
So I play Olive, and she is a native of Lockerbie, Scotland, and was present for the crash. And she is helping Mr. Livingston try and find his wife, who has fled the memorial service 7 years after the crash. We find out a bit more through the evening exactly what happened to her and who she lost in the crash. Because everyone thinks about, yes, people died from the plane, but no one actually considers it fell on a town. You had a plane fall on a town, and what's that experience like?
I'm playing George Jones, and he's kind of the villain, kind of the bad guy. And he's a government official sent to Lockerbie, Scotland, 7 years after the crash, and he's there to basically wrap things up and move everything along. And in the process of closing down the case and the investigation, he's there to burn the clothes of the victims who perished in the Pan Am flight bombing.
I'm mysteriously named Woman One, but I have a name for her, and I think she's actually modeled after a real woman in Lockerbie who, in her living room, half of the plane ended up, along with all of the people and the bodies, and so I think that she's someone who suffered from PTSD. I think she had relationships that fell by the wayside. And I think that these women now are the core of her life. And this mission, it's interesting. I think she vacillates a lot. I don't think she believes as much as the people around her about this mission to wash this clothing and to give it back to the families. I think she believes that it's what the people around her need. And I think she's hoping for some kind of salvation and catharsis through it, that's almost accidental, because I think from the place that she's reacting in, I think she maybe doesn't want to hope.
My character doesn't have a name. Her name is Woman Number 2, and she is a native of Lockerbie. She was there when the crash occurred, and she's involved in collecting the clothes. My character wasn't necessarily as affected as some of the other characters, but we've all been affected in our own way by the crash. And my character, I think, is more focused on helping the people around her rather than focusing on her own grief. But toward the end, I think she realizes that she has a lot of pain and a lot of grief that she needs to face as well.
My character's name is Hattie, and she is a horrible spy because she works as a cleaning woman in the warehouse, and she's trying to spy and see what's going on. But she's too much of a groundling. She's too much of a person who really likes, a person of the earth. And so she's just going to go in. It's her plan to go in, just take the clothes, get them, come out, wash them, and do the things that need to get done. She's not one much really for the rules, but she works in a place that has a lot of rules.
I like Fringe because it is just this amazing festival of theater where people, it's literally that Andy Hardy, hey, I got a barn, let's do a show sort of attitude. And that everyone who wanted to do shows and has always wanted to do shows, I should just do a show. Hey, look, here's an opportunity for me to do a show. So they just pull together their pennies, pull together a cast they want, find a project they want, and they just put it out there and say, hey, look, world, here's some theater that we're doing. And I don't know that there's enough of that in Los Angeles, and I think what's great about that in Los Angeles is when people decide to start going to support all these small little theater productions, then they start getting a taste for theater, and then larger productions get produced, and then larger productions get produced, and larger. So it's a great theater appetizer for Los Angeles in a market where we really need to build our own theater base.
I have done the Fringe before. I like doing the Fringe because it's raw. It's probably the closest to sort of like black box theater you can get. And you get in, you do it, you get out. It's not a very, I wouldn't say organized process. It's very kind of thrown together, but thrown together nicely.
The thing that I really love most about Fringe is it's a bit like theater camp in some ways because there's so much energy and there's so many people. And in Los Angeles, we're so divided by our cars and by geography. So with everyone coming together in Hollywood, instead of being separated by so many miles and so many minutes and the 405, the dreaded 405, you can actually go see theater companies from all over town in the space of a few blocks. So you can park once and go see 5 shows or 2 shows or 3 shows, depending on how much you're willing to invest in an evening. But there's so much energy and there's so many talented people in town. It's great to see them.
Why Fringe? Why not? This is my first Fringe show, so I'm super excited. I'm getting to meet new people and have new stories and new fun things to talk about. So this is a really cool opportunity.
The best part of Fringe and the best part of living in Los Angeles is that you are surrounded by artists. But we don't really get to all be in the same place at the same time, very much. And there's a lot of people that I would never, ever, ever come across just because we all live so far apart. So Fringe is this wonderful coming together of artists, and we all have a story to share and we all respect each other, and it's just a really fun experience, and I really enjoy being a part of it.
But I love how supportive and involved the Fringe community is, because it really is a family, and you do support each other. The Fringe Femmes, supported by the LA Female Playwrights Initiative, has been a fantastic networking group, and Jenny Webb does really great work over there, helping people find and highlight female playwrights.
I've never been in a show on the Fringe, but I have participated as an audience member for the last 3 years. I have so many friends who have done shows here, and they do a spectacular job. I mean, I've seen everything from my friend Sarah Lilly play a Spider Woman superhero monster to the amazing talent that we have in this cast do a one-woman show with at the Sacred Fools outlet. So it's amazing because you can go to many shows in one day and see such a variety of talent. The energy is incredible in the Fringe.
It's like a theatrical parade. There's so much activity. It's like being in a beehive of artists. And I think the community aspect of it is unlike anything else that we have in Los Angeles. I think we're a city where everybody hops in their cars. And it's, you weigh your friendships by whether they're willing to drive to Santa Monica. It's wonderful to be in a place of people who are all passionately doing it no one's there to make bushels of money. They're there because they believe in the piece, and so many people show up for so many other people at Fringe, and the audiences are great. They're there because they're in love with theater and they can't wait to see 20 shows. You don't often see that kind of appetite for art, so it's fantastic.
Why someone should come see this production is that even if the lights and the tech weren't great, which our tech and lights are great, but even if they were just bare bones, what you would really love about this performance and about these characters is how connected they are to each other, even for characters who have just met, and that you can see the links of human interaction being formed and broken and reformed in the progress of like a 75-minute show. You really see the ups and downs and the peaks and valleys of the human condition all condensed in a very passionate form.
Why should people come to see The Women of Lockerbie? It's a great story. It's got some pretty good acting. I'm not going to brag, but I am. And it's not a fun time. It's definitely a little deep, but you do learn a lot out of it.
I think a play like The Women of Lockerbie is important because it deals with grief and the humanity of grief and the humor that can come from grief. And quite frankly, in the world that we're living in, we're all maybe one day away from massive tragedy because shit's happening in horrible ways and you got to find a way to deal with it.
You have to come see The Women of Lockerbie at the Fringe because it's where your heart and your soul will find a place of centered and peace. And I think we bring something to the Fringe, such a big heart, that it's important to see the funny and the things that really move you and remind you that you're a human being.
The reason why people just have to come see The Women of Lockerbie is that grief is a part of life and it's something that we tend to avoid. And the more you avoid it, the harder it's going to be. But it hits everyone at some point in time. And with the world the way it is, we're all pretty close to it. We got no guarantees. So it's a wonderful celebration of humanity.
People have to go see this play production at Fringe because it's relevant. I mean, it really is. It's the storylines from X amount of years ago, but it still pertains to today. And I think it's a wonderful show.
You have to see The Women of Lockerbie because it will be an awakening. Whether it's an awakening from grief, of letting go, of redefining yourself, it will move you, and it will make you laugh, and it will make you cry. And I think I needed it.
You have to come see The Women of Lockerbie at Fringe this year. It is the most beautiful, heartfelt story of human compassion. You won't find it anywhere else at Fringe. It's a true story. It's a beautiful play. It's practically poetry. The staging is beautiful. The emotions, you'll go on a journey of emotions, and there's not one person who hasn't experienced grief and loss and healing, and everyone can connect to the characters in this story.